right, students, good morning. It is a good morning, isn't it? Second day of the term. Tomorrow we write the test. Lovely rain. UCT is in the final, so that's really cool. And yeah, that's really cool. And there's stuff to talk about. So it's university, it's not school. So at university, I don't spend time revising. There are the movies that you can watch on Amatuba, the movies that are made of myself. There's YouTube. There are the exercises that you can do in terms of the test, or the sort of test questions that I've put onto Amatuba, the multiple choice type questions that we could ask. There's the Connect platform, all those kind of things. So unfortunately, I don't have time to revise things, but I do want to spend just a little bit of time talking about incidents of attacks, because I was in the Sarah Botman Hall for a number of hours yesterday, and I saw that some people were battling, and I just want to just go through that again. So basically what we have is a situation of a supply and a demand curve. And when it comes to the incidence of attacks, the critically important thing is usually the question gets asked within the context of a particular type of demand, whether it is elastic or inelastic, and a particular kind of supply, whether that is elastic or inelastic. And usually we would ask this within the context of the one is elastic and the other one is inelastic. So yesterday you drew a rather funny looking supply curve, quite steep, and it only started at 666.7. You remember that on the horizontal axis, and then it went up straight. A bit of a weird supply curve. Let's have a look at a situation where the supply curve is relatively flat. If it's relatively flat, what do we say? Elastic or inelastic? That's elastic. All right? So that's an elastic supply curve, and over here we have, let's say, an inelastic demand curve. You know that we can then read off what is the point of equilibrium at the outset, and let's make that QE. Yesterday I think that was it 1,000? Can't remember, I think it was, and there was a equilibrium price PE, and I think yesterday that price was equal to 50 Rand. It doesn't really matter. Okay, now the government comes along and it imposes a tax, and it levies the tax on the suppliers. So that means that the supply curve is going to shift vertically upwards by the amount of the tax, and I think everybody sort of got that principle. So what that means is we can draw in a new supply curve, which is going to be parallel to the original supply curve. And let's call that supply curve S prime over there. If the tax is 30, and if the equilibrium price is equal to 50, and if you were to just extend that vertical line over there, what would that price over there be? Given the information over here. 80, right. That would be 80 over there. Is that point of any significance? Is it a point of equilibrium? Prime over there, and I can read off in yellow what is the price, and you notice that the price is going to be less than 80, but not all that much less than 80, right? So let's make that price equal to 75. The amount of tax that gets paid is still 30 Rand. The tax amount stays exactly the same. So the question is, how much do the producers get after they have charged the tax onto the consumers and after they've paid the money over to the government. Remember, they are basically the tax collectors on behalf of the government. So this amount is going to be how much? 45. Okay, so what does this mean? If the supply curve is relatively elastic, it means that the producers are carrying about 5 Rand of the tax and the consumers are carrying 25 Rand of the tax. So in other words, in this particular instance where the supply curve is elastic, it means that the suppliers were able to pass the tax increase onto the consumers. And why? A lot. All right? So if that is the case, if they're going to cut back their production by a lot, it means that they don't have much capacity to carry a higher price. And for that reason, they will only carry 5 Rand of the price as opposed to the consumers that have got a greater capacity to carry the higher price. They are not as price sensitive in terms of their consumption to a change in the price. And so the consumers are going to be carrying most of the price. Actually, the consumers are going to be carrying most of the tax increase over there. How much money goes to the government? This is the share that goes to the government. Right, I think most of you can work that out. It's the tax amount per unit, the 30 Rand, multiplied by the new quantity after there has been an increase in the excise tax. Right, and so you can play around. If we find that the supply curve is perfectly elastic, in other words, it's horizontal, then the tax will be imposed completely onto the consumer. So the consumers are going to carry the full value or the full burden of the excise tax. All right. Last questions. I'll take a few, if there are. Any other questions to do with the test tomorrow? You've got a... Oh, if they are both. All right? So if that is the case, if they're going to cut back their production by a lot, it means that they don't have much capacity to carry a higher price. And for that reason, they will only carry 5 Rand of the price as opposed to the consumers that have got a greater capacity to carry the higher price. They are not as price sensitive in terms of their consumption. To a change in the price, and so the consumers are going to be carrying most of the price. Actually, the consumers are going to be carrying most of the tax increase over there. How much money goes to the government? This is the